The night my life ceased being mine, I was 11 years old. The sound of frantic knocking was the first. On the other side of my bedroom door, Aunt Claw's voice was tremulous. Ivy, you must pack your belongings, my dear. Your mother is hospitalized. A child associates hospitals with something horrible. A car accident? Cancer? I had no idea. However, the hospital wasn't the worst part. It was the result. Rachel, my sister, was born 2 months early. Everyone acted like a glass doll had entered our lives, and I was the elbow swinging too close, but I had no idea what that meant. Whispered discussions and antibacterial wipes turned the house into a battlefield. My mother, who was previously affable and a bit disorganized, became a sterile machine. Raw scrubs were used on all surfaces. I couldn't even sneeze close to Rachel, literally. When I coughed for the first time, I was sent to Grandma Amelia's. It felt like a treat at first. Grandma didn't behave like I was a walking virus. Let me assist her in baking and told me about her strange jewelry collection. But gradually, I came to a terrible realization. No one sent me away because they missed me. I was expendable, therefore I was sent away. And there's no turning back once you understand it. I made an effort. I tried, God, perfect scores, science fairs, clubs. My SAT scores were fantastic. When I told my mom, she didn't even look up from assisting Rachel with her arithmetic assignment. That's good, Ivy. While you're up, could you please clean the living room? In the meantime, they made a crazy cake to honor Rachel's perseverance after she received a C+. The worst part, though, it was the talent show at school. I had spent a year practicing a composition on the piano. An entire year. Rehearsals caused my fingertips to bleed. In my dream, I saw their faces applauding for me from the audience. Rachel had a 99-degree fever the day of the program. It's one of those mildly warm feelings you get after going upstairs too quickly, but not a true fever. They never showed up. While all the other children received flowers and applause, I stood on that stage and gave my everything. I received quiet. Rachel performed Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star during her flute performance 2 weeks later. The grandparents, neighbors, and even Aunt Claw, with her terrible foot fungus excuse for never leaving the house, showed up, in addition to my parents. She was referred to as a prodigy. At that moment, I understood that my mother would still be too preoccupied with adjusting Rachel's humidifier to notice if I were to win a Nobel Prize. So I gave up attempting to win their affection. I began to construct something else instead. A life. Silently, covertly. They would never come in contact with it. I needed an escape first, though. Grandma Amelia was the one person who never treated me like a second-class citizen. Rachel treated me like a valued guest each time I was sent away for a mild cough or some other nebulous, fictitious health concern. She didn't linger. She didn't give lectures. I just caught her eye. I was fiddling with some ancient jewelry she kept in these little velvet-lined cases one afternoon while I sat at her kitchen table. She slid a weighty, elegant, almost haunting antique hairpin in my direction. Ivy, do you know what this is? I gave a headshake. Victorian, made by hand. Machines were unable to accomplish this in the past, as evidenced by the engraving. Do you see that little mark? She gestured toward the clasp. The hallmark is that. That's how you can tell it's real. I didn't realize value didn't always scream till then. It whispered at times. You needed to develop your listening skills. I learned more the more time I spent with Grandma. How to determine the temperature of gold. How to roll a pearl between your fingers to determine whether it is real. How to recognize a phony gemstone in a lie-filled room. But none of that mattered back home. I was the only healthy one at home. The fortunate one. The girl had nothing to complain about. What if I was the one who sucked in school? Anticipated. If Rachel did well on a spelling test, get the confetti out? I gave up trying to get applause when I was 16. I joined as many clubs as I could, such as student council, debate, and yearbook, not to fill the void but to get away from it. I started saving money after landing a job at a seedy, tiny cafe. Not for footwear. Not for prom. For liberty. I studied as if my life depended on it when the SATs arrived. Because it did, sort of. Not only did I receive a high score, I received a perfect score. The unseen one, Ivy, did a fantastic job. I was so excited that I shook as I went downstairs with my score report. Mom! I received a flawless score. She didn't even raise her head. It's good, honey. Could you assist Rachel with the kitchen cleanup? Rachel gave an eye roll. God, she seems special to someone. I refrained from crying. I refrained from screaming. Simply put, I swallowed it. As usual. However, I stopped looking for their approval on that day. I came to the realization that day that they would never see me. I also don't require them to. Every scholarship application was completed by myself, completed all of the college papers by myself, no assistance. I received full tuition, housing, and books at the University of Michigan. Everything. My mother scowled when I informed them over supper. Michigan? So far, so good. Rachel will miss having you around. Rachel grinned. All right. I would like to use your space as my TikTok studio. No one accompanied me on the day I moved in. Not even a hug goodbye. I was driven by Aunt Claw. Before I left, she gave me an envelope. This is what your grandmother wanted you to have. She received it from her pension. It was a $2,000 check. I feared I could break something when I gave her such a tight hug. I didn't look back again after that. 4 years later, I received accolades for my graduation. The ceremony was attended by no one. I didn't anticipate it. However, the pain persisted. I got to work at a Chicago auction house, which at initially wasn't very exciting, mostly cataloging bogus Rolex watches and dusty wedding rings. However, I noticed a brooch that was marked replica one day, and something about it seemed strange, too heavy, too specific. After hours, I stayed, hallmarks that were cross-referenced, searched through the archives. It was not a copy. The antique was valued at more than $58,000. I presented the director with my findings. He arched an eyebrow. Are you certain? I said. Try me. At its actual value, the brooch was put up for sale. I wasn't just the new girl after that day, I was the authority. However, there were boundaries to success in someone else's business. I only received a little portion of the incentive, regardless of how many expensive products I verified. So I did something crazy. I give up. I emptied my money, took out a modest loan, and hired a storage unit above a Chinese restaurant. Spotty Wi-Fi and no AC. The smell of Kung Pao chicken filled the walls. It was mine, though. My first workspace consisted of a coffee machine that was older than I was, a folding table, a mismatched chair, and a ton of willpower. I provided reasonable prices, produced excellent work. I developed a small but devoted clientele in a few of months, dealers of antiques, collectors. One man even believed he possessed a cursed necklace from Napoleon's lover, but in reality, he didn't. Then the discovery was made. A collection of family heirlooms was brought in by a private collector. Day and night, I worked on it, investigated every aspect. Everyone else had called the two incredibly rare items I found fakes. At auction, they brought in over $900,000. I received a commission of 10%, $90,000. When I sobbed at my desk, my palms were still stained with ink, not out of weakness. However, I did this after quietly realizing it. Alone. I rented a legitimate office with that money. I hired Jenny, a modest gemology graduate who reminded me of myself, as my first employee. We grew to Miami and New York in less than 2 years. My family, however, continued to believe that I was employed in a rundown pawn store. And, truthfully, that's how I loved it. In my family, Thanksgiving has never been real. We would pretend to be someone we weren't while seated at a table. Kind, thankful, and loving. However, none of those things applied to us. Not at all. Thanksgiving was just another opportunity to praise Rachel and do my purpose. I knew what was going to happen when my mother called 2 weeks prior and said, Ivy, my back has been killing me. Cooking for the whole family might be too much this year. She wanted it handled by me, and I would be labeled the egotistical one if I said no. Once more. So I did it. I made use of a catering service, the same type one often reserved for business gatherings. Turkey stuffed with truffles, homemade cranberry sauce, and sourdough herb stuffing that would have brought Gordon Ramsay to tears. It exceeded Rachel's pay for 2 months. I didn't give a damn. All I wanted was serenity. Rather, I heard Rachel's voice from the other side of the table, You placed a takeout order? Ivy. Jesus. Make a proper stuffing, at the very least. I held my wine glass tightly and remained silent. The same woman who once triggered the smoke alarm by boiling water is saying this. Well, it's a little different this year, but hey, at least we have a meal, my mother said with a feeble giggle. Everybody ate. They all grinned. Rachel talked nonstop about her new marketing job, which I understood to be adjusting fonts on PowerPoint slides and getting coffee. As if she had cured cancer, my parents nodded their heads. I just sat there grinning in the interim, acting. I was aware that I had approved a jewelry authentication deal worth nearly $500,000 this morning. I sneaked upstairs to my former room, or more accurately, Rachel's future TikTok studio, after supper to see how an auction in Hong Kong was going. One of my VIP clients requested my last evaluation before a rare Art Nouveau jewelry was put up. Lost in my job, I opened my laptop and looked over the auction history, weight, and hallmarks. It wasn't until she spoke that I heard her. Are you carrying a charger? I raised my head. Rachel. However, she wasn't looking at me. On my screen, they were locked. My tabs are open. My dashboard for finances. She took a step forward. Too quickly. She lunged before I could shut it. Seized the laptop. We'll see what you're concealing. She stopped. My account balance was there, as clear as day $12.4 million. Her expression changed. Not merely shock. Hunger. What on earth is this? She growled. Is this an actual thing? Whose funds are these? I grabbed my laptop. It's too late. She ran down the steps, screaming. Come on, everyone! Ivy is an absolute millionaire! There was silence in the room, forks in the air, half-raised glasses. Everyone looked at me. Keeping my laptop close to my chest like armor, I stepped down gently. Stop, Rachel. Now, though, she was pointing at me as if I were a criminal. While we've been having difficulties, she has been concealing millions. In the midst of Mom and Dad's debt crisis, my mom let her fork fall. She trembled when she spoke. You have that type of money, right? While we were having trouble? When I was attempting to salvage this house with your father? Not a congrats. We're not proud of you. Just fury. My father got to his feet, his face clenched in rage. We brought you up. You have to repay this family. Then Rachel, as if she were requesting a glass of water, I only require about $2 million. Not very much. Enough to begin anew, similar to you. As if this were entirely logical, my mother nodded. And I've been thinking, as has your father, a Florida vacation house. Nothing ostentatious. Just $3 million, perhaps? I chuckled. Like a cough, it came out. Bitter. Sharp. I'm your bank account now, then? My dad's voice trailed off, chilly, in charge. That isn't the point. It is your responsibility. Without us, you wouldn't have any of this. I put down my glass of wine. Surveyed the space. My parents weren't like this. My sister wasn't here. This group of wolves was licking their lips in the kitchen when I was a kid. I inhaled. I have been depositing $7,000 into your account every month for the past 2 years. Unidentified. In order to assist with the mortgage. Quiet. Mom blinked. You what? I gestured to Rachel, and she claimed to have done it. Rachel parted her lips, then shut them again. Fear flashed across her face. I no longer gave a damn when my dad tightened his jaw. I got to my feet, took hold of my laptop, my handbag, approached the door. I made one final turn. Not one more penny, no more justification. I am no longer in charge of this family. My mother appeared as though I had slapped her. Rachel's mouth was agape. I walked out into the chilly night after shutting the door behind me. I didn't feel triumphant. It was liberty. I believed that leaving would be the end. I assumed they would back off once they realized the truth that I had borne them in silence and paid off debts for which they never even expressed gratitude. Keep quiet. Permit me to survive. People like that, however, don't keep silent. My phone was exploding by the time I returned to my apartment that evening. Communications. Missed phone calls. Emails. 7:42 p.m. How could you harm your family in this way? You were reared by us. 8:15 p.m. Let's speak like grown-ups. You are acting irrationally. 9:30 p.m. All that money is yours. Why do you act so self-centeredly? Rachel needs your assistance. 11:00 p.m. I discovered a stunning home in Florida. Just 3 million. At last, we could all unwind. I switched off my phone. The icing on the cake, however, was Rachel's Facebook post. The drama, the victim complex. While our parents were struggling and I was drowning in student loan debt, my billionaire sister spent years hiding her wealth from us. I've always been on her side. She treats her family in this manner. Hundreds of likes. Suddenly, cousins I hadn't spoken to in 10 years emerged from the shadows. Ivy was always aloof. I would support my family if I had that much money. So unappreciative. I didn't respond. Nothing. I've discovered that the more you explain yourself to someone who just sees what they want, the more they will twist it. I also didn't block them. I hoped they would see me triumph. Jenny, my assistant, came into my office on Monday morning, looking pale and wide-eyed. Ivy, Rachel, and your parents are downstairs. I blinked. What are they? They have security. They claim to have a scheduled appointment. They didn't. I strolled towards the lobby. As if he owned the room, my dad was seated there. Like a brat who has been denied an iPad, Rachel has her arms crossed, and my mother is already shedding crocodile tears. My dad murmured softly, Ivy, we need to talk. I have nothing more to say. Rachel yelled, You can't just cut us off. We're drowning, and you're living in luxury. I examined her from head to toe. High-end purse, manicured nails, new extensions. For someone who is drowning, you appear to be quite at ease. My mother started crying. You were reared by us. We gave up everything. You owe us. I gazed at her. At every one of them. Be calm. Unambiguous. No, I owe you nothing at all. Where were you when I needed help? Not at all. Rachel balled her fists. You lack compassion. I then took out my phone. I launched the banking app. I stopped all the automatic payments there in front of them. Monthly $7,000 gone. My mom's phone chimed with a notification a second later. She let out a gasp. This is impossible. I simply did. My father's face flushed. You'll be sorry for this. Your family is us. I looked at security. Take them out with you. Additionally, put their names on the list of people not to enter. Something behind me was screamed by Rachel. My mother wept like if someone had passed away. My dad scowled as if he wanted to. I didn't flinch either. Like the outsiders they had always made me feel, I watched them being kicked out of my building and firm. My phone called once more later that evening. Grandma Amelia was there. She spoke quietly. Steady. I'm proud. Good job, Ivy. At first, I remained silent. Are you not upset with me? She laughed. Angry? You are the first member of this family to stand alone. All I want is to have seen their faces. I actually laughed. It was my first genuine laugh in days, and I realized this was not an act of retaliation. The money wasn't even the main factor. It was about at last escaping the clutches of those who liked me only when I was helpful. I knew they wouldn't stop after that day, so I made a move. Finding my former apartment was too simple, and knocking on it at late with guilt trips and sob stories was too simple. I moved up to a high-rise penthouse in the safest area of Chicago, complete with cameras, sealed guest lists, and round-the-clock security to prevent unannounced guests. My phone number has been updated. I updated my company's registration, removed all private information from social media. It seemed as if my entire identity had been reset, but the emails still arrived. From fresh addresses, each day. Very ill. Are you truly indifferent? Ivy, family is still family. Avoid doing this. If you allow me to pass away without saying goodbye, you'll come to regret it. My mother gave me that last one. Rachel? She went out in the open. Like she was the lead in her own soap show, she wrote lengthy Facebook articles. I was portrayed in every post as the nasty billionaire sister who deserted her sweet, impoverished family when they needed me. I simply cannot comprehend how someone could be so callous. We were on her side. We had faith in her. She then turned to go. It's interesting how people recall things when others are around. Like waves, the comments were flooding in. Whoa, Ivy sounds so unappreciative. If I had that much money, I would never desert my family. That girl was weird all the time. I didn't answer. Most days, I didn't even check in to read them. Because this is the reality, when I had nothing, they didn't give a damn. Only when I started to be useful did they notice me. And they were angered by my quiet now that I had finished being of service. However, I didn't anticipate the story becoming well known. It was overheard at a charity dinner by one of my well known clients. All of a sudden, I was being discussed in high level auction circles. The woman whose family attempted to overthrow her after she achieved success, but it had the opposite consequence of harming my reputation. People had greater faith in me. Customers came to me for my backbone as much as my eyes. I became a symbol because I created something genuine, without taking any cheap cuts. And I wouldn't let anyone take it away. I opened offices in Miami and Los Angeles within a year. My business rose to prominence in the verification of fine jewelry. For a period, Rachel, in the meantime, she attempted to imitate me. My assistant, Jenny, came into my office one morning with her phone in her hand as if it were on fire. "This will be unbelievable, Ivy." She showed me a piece of writing. "Now open, Rachel's Fine Jewels." In fact, I laughed. Aloud. The same Rachel who referred to pearls as glossy marbles had started her own jewelry authentication company. She has a disorganized webpage. Her images were taken from Pinterest. Her qualifications are non-existent. The reviews began to come in 3 months later. According to them, my Cartier was a fake. I had it examined elsewhere, and it's real, not professional. Employees are clueless about what they are doing. This business is a farce. It was, too. However, the murmurs that went on behind closed doors persisted. It turned out that my family had not learned from all of the public humiliation. They had no money. Once more, bewildered to keep afloat. And me? I didn't do anything. I was once unintentionally texted by Aunt Claw, who most likely intended it for Rachel. "They're desperate between you and me, even though your mom says they don't need your money." They were, of course. When you burn the bridge and expect it to grow back, that's what occurs. A year after cutting them off entirely, I sat on my balcony and gazed over the city where I had made my home, sipping a glass of red wine. I wasn't getting money texts from anyone. At the dinner table, nobody was attempting to guilt trip me. I wanted calm, and no one was calling me ungrateful for it. I was victorious. Not the way they think, though. The fact that I owned the most prestigious company in my sector and had millions in my bank account were not my victories. It was liberty. True, holy freedom. The kind that happens when you quit, pleading to be seen, and begin to live your life as though you are important, even if no one applauds you, particularly at that time. I don't share this tale to win people over. I'm not looking for approval. All I'm trying to say is that sometimes your tribe isn't the family you were born into. You have to leave the ones who taught you how to vanish sometimes. When do you do it? When will you regain your life? Don't turn around. You're not alone if Ivy's tale resonated with you. Tell someone else they're not crazy for choosing oneself by leaving a remark or sharing your opinions. Follow this channel if you're on your own journey to liberation. Here, we're creating a new sort of family.